G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the Round 6 Stock Market video. Hope you're having a cracking week so far. There is a lot going on this week. We've got injuries, suspensions, rookies that need to be culled. We've got some good bubble boys that we may need to even bring in this week. You can see Matty Roberts right up the top there. We've also got Dylan Williams. We've got Johnson from Fremantle. And unfortunately, as I just mentioned, we also have some rookies that we may need to cull. We've got Jimby and McKenzie down there at the bottom that now see themselves with some high break evens. We've got some pod selections like your Cal Wilkie, some fallen premiums like Lockie Neal. Didn't he absolutely go off last week? So plenty of decisions to be made, plenty of plays to talk about. I'm going to leave the intro there. Let's start off and see who's at the top of the list for our 500k plus defenders. At the top of the list this week, we have Cam Wilkie. This bloke has come from the clouds and looks pretty keen to obtain his first All-Australian jacket, averaging 101.8 on the season to date. He's playing a very friendly role and intercepting everything that comes his way. A gigantic 150 on the weekend has him sitting with a low break-even of just 18. Played 22 games in 2021 and 2022. Averaging 73.2 and 82.5 for the season. The Saints are playing a high possession game, which suits him, but there'll be times where he needs to play more of an accountable, traditional key position role, like he did in round 2 against the Dogs, where he only scored the 51 points. The ultimate pod in only 0.4% of teams. If you select him and he keeps his form up, you're on an absolute winner. But if he regresses closer to his 2021 to 2022 average, which I don't necessarily think that he will, then you're in big trouble. Personally, it's not a pick that I would go for, but if you're a lone wolf, this may be perfect for you. The Lizard, love watching this bloke play. He used to love his dad when he played for Fitzroy. He was a great player. His son's built very differently to him, but yeah, Johnny Blake, he was a champ. And Lizard, in his own right, is carving out a really solid career to date, getting better with each game, playing off halfback. He gathered 30 touches and went bang with a 150 plus, coming off a 106 the week before. Bonus kick-ins each week. He had 23 so far for the season, and he's played on from each one. So that's about 4 to 5 a game. Massive pod, only in 1% of sides, which makes him, similar to Wilkie, a very risky selection if things don't go well. I personally don't have the faith, but the game is about enjoyment, and I guarantee you that you'll enjoy watching this bloke run around with his limbs flying everywhere. It's a real sight to behold when he's certainly on the run. Dawson just racks up points so easily. It's a real joy to watch, not as a bloody non-owner though. His left foot's just sublime, rarely misses a target. Goal assists everywhere from bullets inside 50. There was one stage where he actually slipped over, had time to get up, produced an elite little dart for another assist. Actually kicked one out in the full in the second, which is a bit of a jaw dropper. But in true Dawson style, his next possession was lovely inside 50 to Tex. Had some 1-2s, a shot for goal, just got touched on the line, but then he got payback for that. His disposal was a little bit messy to start the fourth when the heat came, but nothing to worry about there. Attended 90% of the CBAs, which is massive. And what a role change it has been. You know, ended up with 32 touches, 21 of those kicks, and also laid 9 tackles. 173 and a 152 in the last 2 weeks is huge. And he is killing non-owners, an absolute star of the comp. And I'd probably go as far as saying that he could win a Brownlow playing in the midfield. Oh, the Seagull. Jake Lloyd. We are starting to see some vintage Seagull, and isn't it fantastic? From uber primo to irrelevant in basically 12 months, he's decided that he needs to be in more Supercoach teams, and he's reminded us about what he's actually capable of. 100, 102, 93 in the first 3, got us listening, and then a 120 and a 119 in the last 2 weeks has really grabbed our attention, averaging 3 to 4 kick-ins per game, showing mainly with the Lizard. Played on from everyone apart from just the single kick-in, finding plenty of the footy, averaging 7 marks per game, laying tackles, just getting the job done. He'll be turning 30 this year, which puts off some people, but if you think he can get back to his 2018 to 2021 form, then absolutely pick him up. I don't share the confidence myself, but that's more of a gut feel. Dacos, the definition of a must-have, and I'm almost 100% sure that anyone who watches this channel would have him in their sides, and a great captaincy option on Anzac Day should be one of the favourites for the medal as well. Liam Baker, love what he brings to the table every week. Not sure if Short will affect him when he returns. We know that Baker is extremely versatile, but his form is undeniable. A slow start with a 63 in round one, but all good from there. 118, 143, 83, and a 113 last week from 35 touches is fantastic. He links up well with Jay-Z and Sheasel and gives you an automatic swing. That big score is now out of his system, so no real value here. You probably get what you pay for. Bailey Dale, only the 57 points with 216 metres gained. Burne-Jones was playing a bit of a defensive role on him after he tore up the Tigers the week before with a big 136. And look, apart from that big score, he really hasn't done much. Owners have a really big decision on their hands, whether or not they want to commit to this pick or get out now while that big score is still in his price cycle. Jack Sinclair could be the man you look to target this week. In my opinion, still a top 6 defender at the end of the year. Scores a 104, 124, 63, 113, and a 90 last week. Isn't too shabby apart from that 60 game, but that's now exiting his price cycle. Had a big first half last week, but then slowed down the second. Comes up against Carlton this week, who he enjoys playing against, so should be a good option. In saying that, you can certainly wait another week. Played a fair bit of mid-time on the weekend, recording a 39% CBA rate, and it was almost the same last week as well. So, as odd as it seems, I hope that lowers, as I prefer him playing out of defence. With Jack Steele back as soon as this week, that should allow Sinclair to spend more minutes in defence, which I think is a good sign. But playing midfield, still okay. So, one to highly consider this week or possibly the next. Stewart ended up with 24 touches, 9 of those intercepts, 7 marks, 3 tackles. Also had a contested intercept mark, which is gold for Supercoach scoring. The ball wasn't in Geelong's forward half for basically the entire second quarter, and when it did stay down there for a period, this in Geelong's backline, Stewart was on the bench, but had a decent second half as well. Ended up on 135 points. His break-even has gone up mainly due to that massive 167, now exiting his price cycle. For those worried about how Duncan would affect him, it seems like we got no concerns. He played a shocker. So, all in all, a fantastic buy last week and seems destined to be a top 3 defender along with Dacos and Dawson. And so good, this bloke in the form he's in. Luke Ryan, 93 points from 17 possessions and over 450 metres gained. It's a solid enough performance on the weekend. He just hasn't failed this year. He isn't getting enough respect for mine. While we've seen Young and Cox score like roller coasters, this bloke has been super consistent. 93 is actually his lowest score for the year. So I actually think he could be a decent pick. Why can't he continue this and finish as a top 6 defender? Freo's draw does get harder from here, but could that mean an even higher spike in points? I'm not too sure. There is something that just still doesn't feel right about selecting Ryan. I can't put my finger on it, but he's the 3rd highest scoring defender and is only 44 points behind Dawson for total points. So one to consider, but the value isn't there like it was earlier in the season. Saad, this is unlucky. Almost came down with a screamer over Keys to start the match, but there were no real highlights, unfortunately. If you trade him in for Doc, super bad luck. He's now injured and will most likely be gone for 1 to 2 weeks, but I'm not really sure on that timeline. And James Sicily, signs haven't been great for Sis in the last few weeks. Seems to be playing more of an accountable role. His teammates aren't using his often. No bonus kick-out points. Look, he only had the one on the weekend. Hardwick took the rest, but we sort of knew going into the season that there was a high possibility that he wouldn't be scoring a lot of points from those kick-ins. I think to make this really simple, we don't look to bring him in this week. We just see how he goes and keep him firmly on our trade-in watch list in the next fortnight. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k. And at the top this week, we have Chase Jones. After missing the first couple of rounds, he came back as a sub for a 34 in round 3, looking like a bit of a nothing pick. But he's looked okay in the last couple of weeks, scoring 93 against Freo and a 116 against Carlton on the weekend from 28 touches, 9 marks, a tackle and a goal. That was a pretty good performance playing off a wing. Career-wise, he's been pretty underwhelming to date, but hopefully this could be the confidence boost that he needs. Plays the Hawks this week, so another decent score could be coming his way. He comes at an awkward price, and I've got a bit of a gut feel that this could be a trap, but at the bare minimum, he'll give you a nice cash grab and hopefully, as I said, some nice on-field points. JJ, his season scores have been on an upwards trend. Started really low with a 36, missed round 2, then up to a 49, 79, and then hit the ton for the first time last week with a 112. 28 touches, 6 marks, and a tackle. Looks similar to Jones. Sits in the middle for me. Feels a little bit trappish. Those low scores are a real concern, but he does have some handy DPP, which has been allocated this week and will allow for some nice potential swings. Taking some kick-ins, which is always a bonus, but they do tend to share it around. So similar to Jones, if you think he can keep it up, then you could go for a quick cash grab as well as some good on-field points. But as I said before with Jones, they both sit in the middle for me. I just don't think they'll give you enough to warrant a trade in. Maxi, thought he looked better than the 60. I think I said the same thing last week, but just looks like a veteran of the game. Had a pretty obvious deliberate free against in the last, which lost him a few points. But a super impressive kid. Should be a reliable on-field scorer for now, but no way we can jump on. As you can see from the symbol, the ship has most certainly sailed here. Unfortunately, Tom Cole is set for a long stint on the sidelines after injuring the same ankle that cost him all of last season. That's a real shame because he was looking like a solid rookie with more cash to make, but he looks like a sell as we can't afford to be carrying too many non-playing players on our bench, and there'll be a few options available to downgrade him to as well. Will Day on the sidelines for another week, but 100% in my trade plans for the week after. We'll probably talk about him more in the next stocky. McKenna, I have the yin-yang on him this week because he had an extremely quiet start to the game, didn't touch the ball in the first quarter, but managed to get himself involved and ended up with 15 disposals and the 4 marks. Good old Rat Bailey gave him a lovely little dish, and the win helped to guide it through the big sticks, which was nice. Missed another opportunity on the run later in the game, so some lost points there, but good to see him get a goal anyway. Finished with 1 goal, 1. Still has a low break even with coin to make, so hold for now. See how he scores this week and then reassess. Liam Stocker, what a man, so rock solid and a really underrated starting pick, absolutely doing his job each and every week. As I said, just super consistent. Miller up, been awarded some DPP, which is nice. Not really keen on the pick though. Hunter Clark, a mid-70 scores this week, just didn't excite me. Apologised to him last week for calling him a trap, but still not a fan of the pick. Alia. A pod that is flying massively under the radar for mine. Apart from a lowly score of 44 in round 2, I think it was, he's notched up a 110, 96, 111, and a 105 last week. That's nothing to scoff at. Out of all defenders who have played the last 3 games, he sits in the top 10 for 3-round averages, and that's including the blokes that cost 500 plus, so possibly a very sneaky selection if you can keep this form up. I'd say he's close to being in the All-Australian squad. I've said that about a few players. You've got Andrews, Wilkie, sure there's a couple more. But with someone like Alia, there is always a chance of a lower score. We did, as I mentioned, see that 44 in round 2. But only 2% ownership, another lone wolf move that could save you, 100k over going a Sinclair or Sicily type. Buckley, he's been a terrific pod if you started him or jumped on early, but the ship has well and truly sailed as a buyer. Redmond, I've got the roller coaster symbol on due to scores of 49, 128, and 72 in the last 3. That's the definition of a roller coaster range, so not keen on him. Massive ceiling and low floor is the best way to describe him, I think. Ruby. This is a killer. Subbed off as I think he needed to rest. Looked a bit banged up and delivered us another low score. Oh, look, he's one we were planning on holding for a while due to on-field potential as well as cash gen, but the cash gen has been halted for now. And as soon as rookies break even exceeds their average, then it's usually time to move them on. The issue here is that although his cash gen may stall in the short term, he still does have the potential to start making coin again in a few weeks, maybe a month's time. He could achieve his break even this week, so I don't have the sell symbol on him. But I do have the chop symbol. It's completely up to you, but he's a must trade out for me in my personal situation, as I'm a little bit behind in cash gen. Whitfield isn't really relevant at the moment, but did gain DPP status as expected. We can now welcome him into our defensive line. Yo's looked terrible, not playing that favourable role as expected, and has actually played key position at times due to the Eagles' injury rows. Not even really worth discussing. Now has a groin injury. Just the same old story with poor Elliott. Jordan Ridley, thought he played a better... I said in my round review, again, this may be owner's bias, but I did think he played better than what he was scored. I did mention again in my round review, I thought that his 20-point quarters should have been closer to 25 to 30-point quarters. Just seemed underscored for mine, but yeah, I do understand. Could be some owner's bias there. He's a bit of a nothing pick at the moment, so we don't need to panic with his break even, but it's just tough to see him on your field in place for Dawson. You know, we're losing so many points. Had a few more kick-ins this week, which was handy, but in my opinion, he's pretty much a luxury upgrade if or when you're in the position to do so. And Richards, I really rate as a player, but similar to Ridley, he's been a bit of a nothing pick to date. Made over 14k, which is okay. It's nice, but nothing special. After the first week, owners were crowing, but after that, he's gone only 100 plus once with a 111 in round 3. Apart from that, score's been 70, 88, and 82 last week. So, again, similar to Ridley, sits in no man's land and probably one just to hold until you can afford to make a luxury upgrade. I still do have some slight hope for the pick, but it may be one week Richards hits a good score, the next week it's Dale, then even a JJ. Far from a failed pick, just tracking along. Look, how do I feel about, the Ridleys, the Richards types? This pretty much sums it up.
I have no feelings about you one way or the other. You're like lint or a bottle cap. You're just a thing to remove.
On to the defenders under 250k. Now, I have the rule breaker here for this week with Seamus Mitchell, mainly because I was looking at going early, not because I wanted to, but because I was literally $400 away from completing my preferred trades. If you haven't seen my round review, feel free to go and view that to get an idea of my pain there. Super frustrating, man. But look, it is what it is. So I decided to message my man Katter, a legend from the SuperCoach Talk community and a Mad Hawks man, and of course my man Steve from SDS, who you all know. So rather than give my take, I'm just going to read out what each of these champions actually said to me. So this one's from Katter. Hey DR, it mentions, how's the family going? A lovely bloke, as he always does. I'll skip that. All right, here we go. As an old stick in the mud super coacher, I personally wouldn't be going early on a fringe player like Mitchell. He basically played the Scrimshaw role, who has a slight toe injury. Also, Bramble is another who played at Box Hill last week and has a solid game that can easily play that role. In saying that, if he plays this week and goes okay, and he's picked for his third game, round 7, I'd seriously consider him as a downgrade option on the bubble. As the Hawks have a plethora of defenders, I rate that our best line for depth. I put Mitchell around 8th to 10th best, and behind Scrimshaw, CJ, Hardwick, Sicily, Frost, Bramble, Impey, and Morrison. Sorry, DR, I'm a no for going early on him. Awesome, Katter. Really, really appreciate that, legend. Great summary there. And then on to my man from SDS Supercoach, my man Steve. G'day, DR. Saw your round review, mate. Bloody heartbreaking. That was about that Cogs member that I was mentioning. Seamus heading into the year, I won't lie, I didn't have much faith in him. Making it to AFL level, but looked very nice off that half-back line on Sunday. He's been training off the half-back since 2022, had some injury trouble last year in the VFL. I believe he is taking Scrimshaw's spot. Exactly what Katter said, and Scrimshaw is a probable for selection this week, so just keep an eye out. I think his job security could be goodish. If he plays well, he should stay in the side every week. He'll stay at halfback, was drafted as a small forward, but didn't look up to it in that role. Much better down back. In the VFL 2 games this year, he got 17 and 26 touches. I think ideally you wait another week, but I can understand the situation you're in, etc., etc. So basically, I think the message that Steve's given me as well is wait another week, unless you are absolutely desperate. So a big, big shout out to Katter and Steve from SDS. Thank you very much, legends. It's made my decision pretty easy. I'm not going to go early myself, but if you're a bit of a risk taker and you need to do something funky, then you could go for it. But from what those two boys have said, probably don't go there. Tyler Young continues to impress, played well, making good coin for owners, a nice trade in a couple of weeks ago. McVee, Shorty and Spills are all over this pick last week. Go back and listen to the Swordplay Potty if you are interested to get a decent scoring rookie on field as well as make some cash. And it did both of those things. The 63 isn't fantastic, but better than many others that we were fielding. Also went up 44k. Looks to have great job security, which was part of the attraction to the pick. But unfortunately, the ship has well and truly sailed here as a buyer. A great starting pick though. A Cowan, again, nothing fantastic. A really slow burn. Laid a great tackle on Tex to get a holding the ball free, but then undid his good work by giving away a down the field free for giving Tex a little whack. Not quite his standard 51, which is disappointing. I'm most likely holding and hoping for a spike game. Not too sure if that will come anytime soon though. The trouble with trading him is that he just hasn't made enough coin to make it worth it for me. The Pepsi Max King played a great game, scored really well with a 68, quickly becoming my favourite Lions player. Jared Berry now has big competition on his hands, but just love Moddy's attitude to football and life for that matter. I'd rather have him on the bench, but he also seems fieldable if you need to. Gain defensive mid-DPP, which opens up another swing for us, and one that we hold on to for at least the next week or two, and then depending on what he scores in the next fortnight, we simply reassess. I might actually ask AFL Doodles to make a custom drawing for the Pepsi Max King. I reckon that one would be pretty cool. And Josh Bruce is injured and now a sell. No real point holding on to him. I'd move him on if you can. There are plenty of other options. And here's another who was rewarded with new defensive forward DPP status. On to the midfielders, 500k plus. At the top of the list this week, we have Danger. The old fella's had a solid 3 weeks with scores 103, 119 and 118. But playing the Suns, Hawks and Eagles, you'd probably expect that. I couldn't go there mainly because of age, and I think he's the sort of player they may give a rest to, so a no from me, but you may have more faith in the pick. Anderson, a 109 after 134 last week. Lost a few points from clangers, had a terrible set shot from 25 metres out in the third, which you'd expect an AFL player to kick. But a friendly break even. Oh, look, I think we simply need to target his teammate this week, and we'll talk about him a little while. DeGoey missed last week, which hurt owners in the top 1% rankings, but should be back from what I know. Don't quote me on it though. Caleb Sarong attended 94% of Freo's CBAs. He's got the highest rate of all Freo mids this year with an average of 81%, just ahead of Brayshaw. Looking like Freo's best mid, and this could be an uber breakout year if this form continues. Freo as a side are not playing well. They have a few mids, young and old, that can run through there, but I just don't see them moving Sarong from this position. He's at least one shining light for them. And look, apart from a 70 in round one, he scored 100 on the dot, a 101 and a pair of 146s. So the ceiling's there. The floor isn't too low apart from that 70, but he does come up against some tougher midfields in the Dogs and the Lions in the next fortnight. Been a little bit of a flat track bully, I think. Already gone up 75k this year, but he's sitting 7th for total points out of all midfielders. So if you feel lucky, you could certainly have a crack, I think, at Caleb Sarong. The bond just continues to slide it up. The way he's going, this may be the cheapest you can get him for a little while, given the fact he's coming off a 122 or 145 and his low score of 89, that's a season low score, is now out of his price cycle. Is a captaincy option, extremely hard to stop when he's on, and a really safe buy, I'd say. He should be in more than 35% of teams. That's way too low for mine. Zerrett has been rubbed out for a week, unfortunately, so one to consider next week if you're keen. Lockie Neal had a few questions about this bloke. Back to his Brownlow best on the weekend. I've got the buy now symbol there, but buy with caution, as this was his best game we've seen this year, and he has undelivered apart from last week, Supercoach-wise. He looked hungry. I haven't seen him look so desperate to get the ball in his hands in a while. Contested possessions, clearances, tackles. He did everything apart from kick a goal. 39 touches, that was a season high, and 15 up from last week's total of 22. So if you think this is a Lockie Neal that'll rock up each week, then he's an easy trade in. It just depends how much faith you have in him. I'd prefer to trade in a bloke that sits just below him on this list, but if you already own the trademark, then Neal could be a solid option. Plays the Giants, Dockers, Blues and the Dons in the next month, and also could be a decent VC option this week. Libba, the man with the Snickers tattoo, he's had a fantastic season so far with scores of 118, 87, 120, 141 and a 101. I like Bont better, but probably the second best midfield option from the Dogs, just in my opinion. This is the man, Touk Miller. He should be one of your major upgrade targets this week and is a firm buy now for me. If you look at the 3 Fs, form, fixture and finance, he's an obvious target. Let's start off with form. 113, 106, 109, 122 and 127. Fixture, plays North, Richmond, Melbourne and West Coast in the next month. You may be worried about his score playing the Ds, but he's actually gone 140 and a pair of 142s in his last 3 against him. So historically, it's actually a great matchup for him. Also has a decent buy. And the third one is Finance. Well, he's already gone down. I don't know if you can hear this dipstick in the background here. Revving his car every time I'm trying to do one of these. I'm not going to edit those. Sorry, guys. You're just going to have to listen to that revving. But back to Finance. He's already gone down almost 40k. And this may be the cheapest you can purchase him in a while. Another big advantage is that he'll be a great captaincy option in the next month also. So tick, tick, tick for me. If you've got the funds to purchase a trademark, I will trade him in without hesitation. Pendles, he's averaged a CBA rate of 68% from rounds 1 to 5, but last week went bang, attending 91%, which was a season high. Starting to slow slightly, but again, we have to give respect for the man for the way he's going about it this year. Just in magnificent shape, a star of the competition. He'll go down as an absolute legend of the game, Pendles. And the Green Bull, he's been rubbed out for a week. I'm not in the position to trade, but if you've changed your mind on his keeper status and believe that he won't finish in the top 8 to 10 mids from here, you could flip him this week if your heart desires. As look, Champion Data haven't rated his games as highly as myself and many others, which is a slight problem. I think the rest could do him good, and I expect him to come back strongly. But if you don't have any decent rookie coverage and you don't have as much faith in the selection as what you did at the start of the year, then you could moving on. Personally, I'm a firm holder. Darcy Parish, the Anzac Day King, attended 76% of the CBAs, which is right on his season average last week. 109, 124, 82, 98 and 108. Isn't anything special, but don't forget what he tends to do at this time of year. He starts to go off. He's finding a heap of the pill. 37 touches, 30, 35, 30 and 34 last week. I think it's his usage which is hurting him. And apart from round 2, his highest tackle count for a game is just 2. We need him to be laying, say, a minimum of 4 each week. He didn't lay a single one against GWS week before, for example. So this is a bit of a hopeful type pick as his scoring hasn't been elite. But as I said, this is his time of year. He loves the Anzac Day game. You could save a lot of money over a Neil or a Clary type. And he does possess a very large ceiling. I would actually consider, if your budget is around the 550 range, don't mind Darcy Parish. Got high hopes for him from here. Jack McRae spent the first 7 minutes of the game on the bench, which wasn't ideal, but worked his way into it pretty early. 112 points was his second highest return for the season. And like Titch, the ceiling just doesn't seem to be there. No real point looking to trade him in. Track, only the measly 1% away from obtaining DPP status. At this stage, there doesn't seem to be a reason to trade him in. Just one to watch for now. Hopefully he gets it maybe around round 12. The only issue with that, though, pretty much our teams are complete, aren't they? Maybe you'll have a spot there available, who knows. Titch actually had his lowest CBA rate of the year with 48% for 107 points. Only the one failure in round 4 against Lions with the 64. But aside from that, he's got 100 in every other outing. The main issue here is his lack of ceiling. As I just mentioned with McRae, we won't see those 140 type games like we have in the past. But if nothing else, he should deliver a consistent maybe 95 to 110. My man Lady was just on from the start. Looked like a different beast. Was craving to get the ball in his hands. 4 touches in the first 2 minutes. Lays a tackle. Then gets a 50-metre penalty and kicks truly from the square. It was absolutely brilliant. Again, I hit the roof, yelling, shouting, screaming, did a little lap of the kitchen, and then composed myself again. I think the neighbours thought there was a murder going on, and I'm surprised George didn't hear me up in Adelaide. And with that 50, it was actually from a player trying to get on Dawson, who was snitching around the back for an assist. Then Rory could have had another shot for goal, around 50 metres out, but gave a handball off to Brodie Smith, who sailed one through. Hewitt was playing close attention to lead at stoppages, and that dropped off slightly. He was getting clearances, contested ball, 1-2, had 10 touches at 90% in the first 10 minutes of the game, and by the end of the quarter, had 16 disposals. Back to lead of 2022. Obviously slowed up a little bit from there. I noticed that his rotations were quicker this week, which was also nice. Had his highest CBA rate of the year with 87%. There were a few frustrations for me though, maybe owner's bias, but he gets done for a ridiculous high, then cops a high tackle himself. doesn't get a free. He actually gets done for holding it. Then on the boundary line, not long after, he should have received a free kick for a great tackle, but unrewarded. Another time Walsh was holding him, didn't get the free. So, as I said, possibly owner's bias, but looked pretty obvious to my eye. But you can never really trust a lead owner, can you? I suppose they say. Missed another opportunity to ice the game, but as I said, overall a super performance. I was really happy, looking much more like the man I paid 700k for. Cripper had a 94% CBA rate, which was his highest of the year, but only the 19 touches for 80 points. Jelly, this one would sting owners, looking great in round 1 before getting knocked out for an 80. Follows that up with a sizzling 148 against the Blues, but then only the 108 against Essendon and 80 against the Hawks. Super disappointing there. Another one. Talk about disappointing. LDU, not looking like the LDU we saw in the first couple of weeks. He struggled to make much of an impact with scores of 102 and a 90. Far cry from 143 and 155 that we saw. Were people blinded by some hot early season form? Oh, possibly, but I think he can bounce back. My advice is don't trade out, don't trade in. And Clary, possibly a career low 2 disposals for 9 points in the first quarter. That had non-owners like myself dancing, only on mid-30s score by half time. Here we go, we were thinking, here we go, up to around a 70 at 3-quarter time. We're thinking, good quarter, but surely he doesn't do anything decent. But we know what happened. In true Clary style, he notches up a lazy 20 touches in the last to massively recover his score and allow new owners to breathe a bit of a sigh of relief. If you did purchase him a couple of weeks ago, like many did, he hasn't really delivered on the price you paid, but he's just so consistent, and even though he may go down slightly, you've got a captaincy option each week. You don't need to worry about finding the funds to get him in. Your job's done. You can just sit back, relax, and enjoy watching him go about his work. On to the midfielders, 250 to 500k. Now, on this list, I don't think there are real trade-in options. It's all about who to trade out. Phillips, it was a huge miss from me. Gained DPP status, looks to have cemented a spot in Clarko's best 22 for the short term anyway. Spewing I don't own him, a massive mistake. Philippou played well on the weekend, gathered 19 touches, kicked a goal for 67 points. An easy hold, more cash to make. Callahan, most have traded him out already, but with a low break even of 20, he'll also make some money and is an easy hold. Warple hit back to form, looking much better than a couple of weeks ago. He'll make 25k with a mid-80s score, which seems very realistic, particularly with Day out of the side. Easy hold again. Ollens, I think still a hold for now. Ready to cull in a week or two, depending on how he scores this week. Actually, he didn't receive a friendly Supercoach to fantasy ratio last week. 94 fantasy, but only the 72 Supercoach points. Goes to show, though, he's still finding plenty of it. 23 touches, 4 tackles, 7 marks is fine. Hopper, 115 from 32 touches on the weekend. Another great performance. Not one to trade in, not one to trade out. Hopefully he can just be one of our last upgrades. Baker, after a brilliant game against Lions, he slowed up. In my opinion, played better than his score, but it is what it is. That break-even's getting close to that average, so I think he's another player we can possibly look to move on. In saying that, he plays Freo, Hawthorn and GWS in the next 3, which are friendly matchups, and all he needs is an 80 plus to get his price rising again. Not a must-trade out option, but I can understand if you want to go down that path. Will Settergoat, Joey's man, kept Clary extremely quiet in the first few quarters, as well as scoring well himself. He did let that tag go in the 4th, but a great game in my opinion. Tackled well, I think it was 9 total, and really did the tough stuff. It's not ideal seeing him tag, but I think it should be matchup dependent. Some are looking to trade, which is fine, but due to scoring potential and so many dodgy rookies that we may have to field, I'm holding for now. Has a break even of 80 and hasn't gone below that all year. So as I said, pretty safe hold. And Cam Mackenzie, unfortunately close to a must trade out this week. His sub-affected score of 14 has killed his short-term cash gen, and there's a real chance he loses money in the next couple of weeks. Has had a role change after Pracky game and after round 1 with his CBAs lowering. Had a few when he came on last week as a sub, but still major concerns there. It's tough because he's one of the few rookies with decent scoring potential, but obviously needs a right role and doesn't seem like he'll get it. So for me, he is one of my number 1 trade out targets this week. On to the midfielders, under 250k. Luke Edwards, a pretty easy pass to me. Inflated price, a non-friendly Supercoach role, and he plays for the Eagles. A small chance it works out, but I wouldn't be banking on it. Matty Johnson, similar to Roberts, finally got an opportunity to play a full game this week and actually looked pretty good. 67 points from 15 touches and a goal. His job security does worry me though, with other players like Brody not in their best 22, and I think Freo may be experimenting with a few different things after a shocker start to the year. Almost had an identical time on ground to Jager, which was mid-60s, so not great, but we know he's a talented player, early draft pick, he can find the footy, and I think he deserves to keep his spot for at least another week. If you're looking for a mid-rookie, he's probably your second best bet after Matty Roberts, who we'll discuss in the forward line a little bit later. Roaston played as a sub last week, and when he came on, went bang and scored a very respectable 42 from only 23% game time. With Green out this week, surely he gets a chance to start in the 22. He deserves it after what he did in just over a quarter last week. Phillips was a much better option though in hindsight, a bit of a killer if you decided to go Roaston over our man Phillips. And Bytel has an ankle injury, so look, won't lose any money due to not playing, but I think it's probably just time to sell with his high break even anyway. On to the big boys in the rucks, and up the top we've got Nettie Moyle, averaging 49 over his first two now in the bubble. Look, with Witts still in doubt, you may want to go with the handcuff strategy if you're planning on holding Witts. Now, that basically involves pairing your R1 with an R3 from the same side, with the idea that if your main ruck misses, for example Witts, then your emergency from the same side, in this example Moyle, will play that week. This obviously only makes sense when you select an R3 from the same side though as your R1 or your R2. You may just decide to flip Witts if he misses again, but if not, this may be a bit of an ideal strategy. As Sava, the Rack King, a pair of 88s in the last couple of weeks, has seen his break-even go into negative territory, which is a huge win for owners. Was looking like a bit of a dud pick a few weeks ago, but he's looked great and seems to be more comfortable in that role with every game he plays. It was certainly a tale of two halves stat-wise. Early on, he was playing that spare man at times, reading the ball really well, marking everything that came his way, was on close to 40 points at quarter time, had 7 marks just in the first quarter to go with 8 disposals and a tackle. In quarter 2, had another 6 touches, 2 marks, but didn't actually record another disposal for the game. Did lay some tackles and had some 1%ers though, which helped. He has been a saving grace for some Witts owners, and what a time to hit form. This is exactly why it's handy to start with some ruck cover, looking to make another 40k this week, and great to have that 88 in his price cycle for the next two as well. Samson Ryan, no cage game, but got found out at times, particularly when in the ruck and pushing down into defence. 8 touches, 2 marks, and a goal, 16 hit-outs for 56 points. Isn't too bad, but the ship has sailed here. No point paying up for him now. Soldo is due back in, I think it's 1 to 3 weeks, which obviously may affect him. Grundy, what a sugar hit he's been, another 120 plus. The discussion pretty much remains the same. What happens when Gawn returns? Is it this week, another 2? I'm not too sure. What happens to his scoring? Well, I think that Grundy will still spend a fair bit of time in the ruck while Max blows out some cobwebs. What the ruck split looks like a week or 2 after that, I've got no idea. With no Gawn is a super pick, but with Gawn, questions over his ceiling certainly come into play. But I suppose I'm not as worried as what I originally was. It was look, it will be an interesting pick when he comes back. Shrek, another fantastic game by the big fella. A reward for sticking with him through the dark times earlier this year. Took a nice intercept mark on the line in the first. I knew he was on. Plenty of hit-outs to advantage. I swear he got ripped off a couple. You know, I watched my players like a hawk, but there was one in particular was awesome. This tap out, lovely tap down to Brayshaw, which led to an Amos goal. Another one straight down to Sonny for a goal assist. A few tackles thrown there as well. There was one where he laid, I think it was on Rao, and he absolutely smashed him. He was tackling to hurt. Then he just started trying to grab it out of the ruck for a while. There was one time he grabbed it, ran straight to the boundary, then went on the right peg. It looked so awkward. The big fella also took a big mark in the fourth as well. Hit the roof, then he shanked the goal. But all in all, really dominant performance. Just keep in mind, he has had a decent fixture lately and luckily managed to avoid rucking against Witts. English this week will be a tough job. Will Shrek struggle? I'm not too sure. I think he will, matching English's run around the ground. Remember, English plays like a midfielder at times, so I think he may struggle there. On the other hand, he certainly has a strength advantage, so that may help with some boundary throw-ins. Do they even give a little bit more ruck time to Luke Jackson, given the fact that he's a similar type player to Tim English? That may be a slight concern. Maybe that ruck forward split for Shrek this week against his particular opponent may not be as favourable. We'll just have to wait and see on that. Rowan had a slower start to the match scoring wise, but hit back with a 120 plus. Not the best score considering his ruck opposition, and to be honest, I'd love to be able to luxury trade him to an English. Am I in that position? Absolutely not. And I think there are better ways of spending 150 to 200k. Marshall isn't a disaster pick. He's highly owned, but has been very underwhelming to date. I'm holding for now, hoping he comes good. English, as I just mentioned, continues to dominate with 130s, 140s. Probably the most reliable captain option each week. If you chuck the C on him every week, you would have been absolutely laughing. Basically a must-have at this stage, but you most likely need to break the bank a little bit, won't you, to bring him in. At this stage, non-owners, we're just praying for a sub 100. Not looking likely, though. And Witsy didn't attend Tuesday's light training session, so doubts still remain whether or not he'll be right for this week. If we had known this, then it was an easy trade out, a week or two ago. But I think most of us thought it would probably be just the week. But again, if he's out this week, major concerns for owners. He'll be tested later on in the week, I've heard, and they'll go from there. So, yeah, owners, make sure to keep your ears open for any updates on him. On to the forwards, 500k plus. We'll get through this one pretty quickly. Jeremy Cameron has looked like the best player in the comp in the last couple of weeks. Keeping in mind he's played Hawthorn and West Coast B team. It's saying that he did score 149 against Carlton in round 2. And that's what we love about Jezza, his ceiling. We've already seen that 149 as well as a 156. His low scores of 77 and 80 are fine to stomach when he makes up for it in his ceiling games. Plays a possibly undermanned Swans defence this week. We'll have to wait to see what team sheets look like and check out the availability of their key defenders. But particularly if they're still missing a couple of blokes, then Jezza could have another big game. I actually don't hate it. 2.7% of coaches traded him in last week, and have been really, really happy with his output. Timmy Taranto, on repeat, playing well, butchers a ball. I love owning him, and he's just been really consistent. No 140 plus scores on the horizon, but no sub-90s either. Dunks finally posted a ripper score. It was his highest of the year. Oddly enough, his CBA rate was the lowest for the year for date. So make that what you will. We all have him, and hopefully he can become a captaincy option for us again. Rosie started on the bench for the first 7 minutes. What the hell was Crazy Kenny thinking? I'm not too sure. End up getting into the game, but another sub-ton isn't great. The stat sheet looks friendly. 26 touches, 17 of those kicks, 5 marks and 6 tackles. But when you're going at 58% efficiency for the match, it's very hard to reach triple figures. I'm a happy owner, though, and still don't have any major concerns. And Dylan Moore was at the top of the list a week or two ago, but now at the bottom, which is no surprise with his forward role, I would be avoiding. Onto the forwards, 250 to 500k. Up the top, we've got Tomahawk. Beat up on some weak oppo lately. I've got the empty wallet symbol there, so if you're desperate to bring someone in with limited funds, he could be an option. Has a massive ceiling when he's on. Could make some quick cash with a very, very outside chance of becoming a cheap keeper. Owen's a massive pod that's been loving life under Ross. Only the one big score of 143. Aside from that, hasn't gone over 100, so no real point considering him for mine. Oscar Allen, this bloke is on fire, holding his head really high. A bag of 4 over the weekend after kicking 3 the week before against the D's sees him with a low break even and more coin to make. Hats off to you if you started him. He's been brilliant. 97, 71 and 113 this week. 14 goals for the season in a struggling side is super. So well done, son. Toby Green been spending more time in the mids, which has helped his scoring potential, but can't see him as a top 8 forward unless he plays full-time midfield. If that was the case, he'd be the first player I'd bring into my side. Heaney, we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly so far this year, so even though he's in good form, an ugly score may be just around the corner, so a pass for me. In saying that, he did go on a red-hot run last year, and if he can replicate that, he could be a decent pick. I just don't have the faith, though, and being a burn man from my past. Sheasel, well, what do you say? Should be in 100% of sides. Should be a keeper. Has just been allocated DPP status. The golden child along with Dacos for SuperCoach 2023. An amazing talent. Chandler, after a red-hot start to the year, he's delivered a pair of 50s, which has holding his cash gen for now. Look, I think it's fine to move him on and bring in a bubble boy and bank the cash, but he does have the potential to score 90s and plays Richmond, North, Gold Coast and Hawthorn in the next month. So, due to fixture, I would probably hold if you can. Horn Francis, after a terrible performance for the first 3 quarters, he hit back hard in the last to get some shining praise from Kenny. After only 8 touches in the first 3 quarters, he gathered 11 disposals, 7 of those contested, which included 4 clearances and 5 inside 50s in the last. The issue here is the gap between his best and his worst is massive, but at the same time, we need to remember he's only in his second year of football. Zachy Butters, after a very below par season to date, he hit back with his best performance of the year and a clear BOG for mine. 32 touches with over half contested, 8 intercept possessions, couple of tackles, 565 metres gained, hit the scoreboard and had 7 clearances. So an all-round game, and he flourished when he's been given more opportunity in the mids. Has a decent upcoming fixture, so look, it could be a realistic option this week. The issue is there's always some concerns with the pick. His kamikaze style of play can lead to injuries. His form has been up and down. It was okay with 101 to start the year, but a 67, 79 and an 89 isn't great. If you think he can continue with his form from last week, then go for it. But I'd probably like to see him perform at a high level for another week before considering. In saying that, you probably do need to make the decision now, because if he goes big again, you'll have to pay out more. It really does depend on whether or not you want another week's data or not. But if you do want that week's data, you'll most likely have to pay up. Jay-Z hit back with 100 plus, has new DPP status as expected, and could realistically be a keeper on 2 lines. He's been playing well enough, I think, for that to occur. The issue here may be Aaron Hall. He's been playing well in the 2s and looks set to return this week, so not sure if that affects Jay-Z too much. I'm hoping not. Lukosius, if we think Dawson's the best kick in the comp, surely this bloke must be in the top 5. In saying that, his goal kicking majorly let him down last week. Had a big case of the yips. What was it? 1 goal 4. So look, if he kicks straight, that becomes a monster score. As a SuperCoach selection, I couldn't go there, but he's looking like an A-grader that we thought he could be when he was first drafted. Cozzy, disappointing score from him, only the 61 points, not really interested at this stage. Errol started the Amati party off again with a lovely little assist, had a great first quarter on 39 points, but really slowed after that. Just tracking along, sort of doing what he needs to do, still looking like a top forward for mine, but let's be honest, 88 is unders. We want to see some more ceiling scores soon, and we know that he's capable of going massive. And Mr. Cogs, he is my most likely trade-in for this week, personal circumstance, even though his break-even's in the red. It may be a choice if you're looking to go someone in your forward line between, say, a Cogs and Butters, who we just talked about before. We know that Champion Data, they have their favourites, such as Bont, but Cogs must have done something to offend them, because he's being scored very harshly, in my opinion. His stat sheet last week, for example, was fantastic at first glance. 33 touches and 9 tackles. That usually suggests, a 125 at minimum, but I suppose 67% efficiency did hurt him. If he cleans up that disposal, then surely CD have to reward him. Averaging 80% CBAs on the season, and with Green out this week, that may even rise. The roll's there, he's finding enough of it. As I said, I just think he needs to clean things up. Remember, after round 1, people were scrambling to get him in at around 550k. That was only a month ago, and it's not like his form has just fallen off a cliff. Things just haven't gone right. You know, little things like the descent free kick, some unlucky frees. Cash gen may be a struggle this year, so personally, I'm targeting the fallen primos like Cogs and looking for good value. I think that's what he presents, and I'm expecting a big game from him this week against the Lions up in Canberra. And we'll finish off with the forwards under 250k. Thanks again for sticking with me as always. Dylan Williams on the bubble this week, playing off half-back. He scored 64 against the Swans and 51 against the Dogs last week. Has a nice kick-to-handball ratio with 13-3 and 8-2. Only averaging 13 touches, so not a ball pig by any stretch, but playing a solid role. He kept his spot with Burton back in the team, which is a plus, but Jonas was out, so not sure how that affects him. I don't see too many players to come back in and take his spot, but again, I'm not an expert on Port's list. Plays West Coast at the Adelaide Oval this week, which should be a nice matchup. And if he's named, a nice option to trade in. More of a bench option if possible, though. Matty Roberts, probably my most preferred trade-in option this week. Has actually played 4 games, but his first 3 were sub-affected. And that's still a slight risk going into the future with a few Sydney players to return. Interestingly, though, they're mainly key position players to come back in. Sydney's ins were a little strange last week, as they didn't necessarily replace like-for-like players, so we need to keep that in mind. He's played everywhere so far, but mainly off a wing last week, and didn't he deliver when he finally had a proper opportunity to start in the 22? Was extremely clean with his usage, was going at 100% for a fair while, 14 disposals, over half contested, 4 intercept possessions, 4 marks, 4 tackles, and as I mentioned before, used it really well, ended up going at 93% for the game. Now, don't focus too much on that projected score either, because if he starts in the 22 again this week, he'll go much higher than that. His 90 plus score will also stay in his cycle for the next 2 as those sub-affected scores start to drop out. If you can think, you can keep his spot for the next even 2 to 3 weeks, he should actually make enough cash to make it worth a while. Is a bit of guesswork here where or if he actually fits in the Swans' best side. So if named, I'm jumping on and is my best trade-in option, just ahead of Williams, purely due to scoring potential, and the DPP is a handy bonus. But if I was rating this purely on job security, I may favour Williams slightly over Matty Roberts. Fergie, 3 snags on the weekend for another 70 plus score is exactly what we want from the man. Was looking like a slow burn, but should make the magical 150k profit in the next couple of weeks. Glad I held the faith with him and didn't trade him for Chandler a couple of weeks ago. Fergie has actually outscored him. Van Ruyen made 50k this week, which was nice, but too late to jump on. Ship has sailed. Davey was going to play last week, then be the sub, then he was rested altogether. Snelling came in and did play well, so not sure if he comes straight back into the side or not. We'll wait for team sheets on that one, but yeah, you could possibly look to Cal Davey. I think that's fine. Pedler, back after suspension, had a massive 2v1 win on the boundary line in the last quarter during a really crucial stage in the match. That really impressed me, with a break-even of 3, an easy hold for now. Ruckman, decent score after a failure the week before, but again, it's too late to jump on now. Kammer, unfortunately rubbed out for 3 weeks from his hit on Murphy. Look, in my heart of hearts, I don't think he meant to go high in any way, but unfortunately, the way things panned out, he did hit him high, and he'll have to sit out. So, being out for 3 weeks, that may be a tough hold with other options on the bubble this week. Charlie Common, I think he'll just continue to be a slow burn on your bench. A spike score would be really, really nice. Humphrey, another one on the bubble this week. Look, did some nice things during the game, but also seemed to go missing at times. Clunked a ripper one-handed mark and kicked truly for his first AFL goal. Always great to see everyone get around that first goal kicker. A few rubs on the head, you got to love it. Then a minute later, after that, he gave one off to Swallow, their most experienced player. Really good to see the new and the old combine. Then I reckon maybe 2 minutes later, Humphrey had another opportunity with a set shot from about 45 out. Just missed those. So had a really hot period there. But as I said, did go missing during other stages, which is expected with a first-year rookie, particularly playing a forward role. On the bubble this week, but at his inflated price, that probably puts me off. Certainly a talent, but 38 points just isn't enough. Noah Long, been a great rookie that may be ready to cull in a couple of weeks, but an easy hold for now. And Jai Menzie, close to being on the chopping block and really needs a nice spike game to rise again. I'd be happy to trade him out if you want. So that's it for now, guys. All the very best of luck with your trade-ins and your trade-outs for this week, and I'll see you soon for the Sword Play Potty. Cheers, bye.